today's topic is linked with two issues: the migration influx and the attitude of European citizens toward migrations. As we all are aware, the attitude of European citizens toward migrations is changing, and that is it is becoming a political platform of many political parties, especially right-wing parties, the anti-immigration policies. So my question for today is, does the change in attitude towards migration mean the end of Schengen? Why? Of course, as we already heard today, migrations are a phenomenon which originates in time of making of mankind. If there were no migrations, then all the mankind would live in Africa today. So it's all present, it's continuous, and as already mentioned, unstoppable. It is impossible to halt migrations. However, they are today an issue that prompts all countries to rethink their response and attitude towards migrations. Namely, they are beginning to be the foremost issue in most Western countries, which can be called the countries that attract immigration, which of course is especially so for European countries, with a special highlight with the Western European countries. We are now, as scholars say, in the fourth phase of migrations in Europe, after the Syrian crisis and the deluge of migrants coming to Europe in this period via Turkey and other migration routes. This phase is obviously and notoriously marked with vast changes in attitude with regard to EU legislation, with regard to migrations and border control, as was already mentioned in our first today's lecture. So these changes request further research, as it is necessary to protect migrants in need of protection and ensure that those in need of protection have access to the asylum system. At the same time, it is necessary to protect EU outer border and to ensure that it functions as a barrier for those who do not meet the prescribed conditions for entry or the conditions to apply for asylum. So the answer to this should be twofold. First, the Schengen rules and the common European asylum system. However, we could ask ourselves one interesting question, and that question is, what happened to the passage of time that we walked the path from the proclamation in 2005 that Schengen had come to epitomize freedom, security and European success, which are the words of Luc Frieden, the President of EU Justice and Home Affairs Council, on the celebration of the 20th anniversary of the Schengen Agreement, to the Schengen is not working as we say today. Furthermore, what is happening to the common European asylum system? The goal of this system is to offer a satisfying status and to ensure the implementation of the non-refoulement principle with regard to all third country nationals in need of international protection. However, it became obvious during the Syrian crisis that the Dublin system, as it is set, does not work, and that it creates a problem. So instead of increasing efficiency and mitigating the refugee crisis, the Dublin regulation appears to be unfairly burdening smaller countries, especially those with fewer resources. As a result of the regulation, some member states now fear for their sovereignty and national interests. Member states appear to be cooperating less as a result of the regulation. As a consequence, as we already heard today, there is this new pact on migration and asylum in 2023, but the legislature is yet to be drafted. All this should be, of course, linked with the changes that are occurring in the member states toward their attitude toward migrations. And we should point out that almost 5% of the total European population is now made of third country nationals. And according to Eurobarometer surveys, this issue of integration of migrants is an extremely important issue for all European citizens. And more than 2/3 of Europeans see integration of migrants as a crucial issue. This, of course, is linked with the political changes in the European Union member states, in which right-wing parties are winning more and more popularity, thus forcing the now in power parties to change their policies towards migration with strengthening of anti-immigration policies and regulations. This is why Schengen is so vital for all of the European Union. This project for establishing an area without inner borders has been at the core of European integration since the Treaty of Rome. The so-called Schengen area now covers more than 4,300,000 square kilometers, stretching from the Arctic to the shores of Mediterranean. Within it, almost 420 million people can cross the borders of 27 European countries. But it is obvious that now this project is in crisis. Namely, normal functioning of Schengen was always taken for granted. And it was taken for granted that it will be always possible to maintain the absence of border controls on the inner borders. It was widely accepted that even in the case of massive influx of migrants, Schengen could be maintained through the strict application of its provisions. However, migration showed their detrimental effect on the concept of borderless Europe as early in 2011, with the now famous French-Italian controversy. So in this issue, the Commission, instead of launching infringement procedures against both governments, despite evidence that their functioning is against or not in accordance with the Schengen rules, the Commission decided to propose a new legislative package under the title Schengen Governance Package in mid-2011, which was successfully adopted in 2013. This brought stronger European supervisory approach. However, this did not resolve the biggest problem, as I see it, for the functioning of Schengen, and that is the reoccurrence of re-establishment of border controls on the inner borders. It should be mentioned that in the 9 years preceding 2015 and the Syrian crisis, inner controls were introduced for a total of 40 times, while in the following 5 years, from September 2015 to October 2020, this number rose to 237. In the 2022 State of Schengen report, the Commission reported that internal border controls between Schengen states have been reintroduced more than 280 times. This started in France in June 2015, before the migrant crisis reached its peak, when the French authorities decided to reinforce controls at its southeast border with Italy. In September 2015, Germany, Austria, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway decided to reintroduce border checks at internal borders, which was prompted as the dislocation of the Schengen area and the Schengen crisis. So Schengen area in the period of 2015 to 2022 has seen persistent border checks at internal borders in 6 member states, so France, Austria, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, that repeatedly prolonged these border checks due to different threats. Uncontrolled migratory inflows indeed tested the EU, revealing an unwillingness among the member states to coordinate actions. Accordingly, the normalization of the Schengen area and the lifting of temporary internal border controls started to be the Commission's priority. The Commission pointedly noted that it is a strong external border which allows us to free up our internal borders through the Schengen area and to guarantee free movement of people. There was this very important judgment of the Court of Justice of the European Union in April 2022 that Article 24, Paragraph 4 of the Schengen Border Code must be interpreted as precluding border control at internal borders from being temporarily reintroduced by a member state on the basis of Articles 25 and 27 of the Code, where the duration of the reintroduction exceeds the maximum total duration of 6 months when there are no new threats that would justify applying such measures, especially if such measures are applied as the first aid measure and not rethinking whether the problem can be solved on another manner. However, as can be seen today, member states extend border controls notwithstanding this judgment of the court, and the Commission is not instigating infringement procedures. Instead, it again proposed the changes of the Schengen Border Code in 2021, and the Commission detected two, of course, major issues or problems with the regulations. First, border checks at internal borders which are long-lasting and applied against an abstract threat or used as first aid measure, which is a violation of the EU law, and discrepancies in the application of the measures at the external borders. So no member states are using different approaches when their approach should be unified. So today's situation with regard to border controls, you can see on the slide. For I set two tiers. First, the reintroduction of border controls from 2023, which are extending to 2024. And you can see the newest reintroduction of border control in 2024, Italy with Slovenia, Czech Republic with Slovakia, and Poland with Slovakia, and all the others from 2023. So there are numerous inner border controls. So the Schengen evolved from a coordinated solo effort by France and Germany in 1984. It was almost taken for granted that free movement and Europe without borders will be a lasting success. However, the change in migration influx in the EU showed as early as 2011, not in 2015, not in 2022, that the Schengen area is highly vulnerable, and that the joint trust, which is maybe more important, that the joint trust of member states is very fragile. This is also the reason that the Schengen member states, however, kept a firm grip on issues of border control and national security, which touch upon the very core of national sovereignty. This can vividly be seen through the mechanism of recurring establishment of border controls at inner borders, which is an obvious reaction of member states to the problems that are occurring on the external border, which is, in their opinion, not performing its function, and that's why they reintroduce inner border controls. Of course, one should not neglect the political context and aspects of tension between member states and the path the European Union is or should be going. That is an ongoing issue that is very pronounced. So one must also highlight that the abolition of controls of internal borders do not mean that the EU as a legal space constitutes an abstract and borderless space, which in contrast to the member states' legal orders is not based on territory. Quite the contrary. The abolition of internal border controls goes hand in hand with the establishment and fortification of a common external border, and thus constitutes a common bounded space that is more than the mere sum of the member states' territories. The abolition of internal border controls that thus constitutes an essential element of the EU's territorial claim and EU law's territorial grounding. This, of course, means that the external border must provide sufficient protection and security for the member states so that they do not feel their national security and national interests are endangered by the lack of border controls on the outer border, inner borders. It is safe to conclude that the attitude towards migration in the EU has changed dramatically in the last decade, the biggest facilitator being the Syrian crisis. This crisis showed that then enforced legal regulation of migration and asylum is not up to the task. The crisis also showed that very obvious differences in approach to migrations between the member states exists. It is obvious that the EU migration policy has undergone a change in the past 20 years towards increasing securitization, and in this discourse, migration has turned into risk management. Therefore, it is important also to be careful not to amend the EU regulation on migration and asylum policies in a way that will be detrimental effects on fundamental rights of migrants and asylum seekers. Equilibrium is, of course, hard to achieve. Because sovereignty is a very complex phenomenon, which can be strengthened and restricted simultaneously. The emphasis should not be on the dichotomy between the selfish states and a common EU approach, or between solidarity and national interest, as the two sides in both dichotomies are in reality compatible. Namely, Schengen rules can also be a tool for ensuring the rule of law, while protecting the right of asylum in individual cases. It just needs to be fine-tuned, and member states are responsible for its implementation in proper manner. Schengen lays on the notion of mutual trust of member states. Inner states must be able to trust the outer states to protect adequately the outer border or the external border of the EU. When this and if this comes to pass, then again there will be absolutely no reason to keep the now in place inner border controls. And I believe this is in the interest of all member states. Thank you very much.